Let's go ahead and find our seats, please, and let's get started. I now call the August 6th, 2019 regular meeting of the City Council to order. Please, Mr. Brian Nevins, if you'd like to come and give our invocation, please. Okay, Ms. Hoffman, if you could take roll, please.
Mr. Burke. Here. Mr. Cahill.
Present.
Ms. Kyle. Present. Mr. Skidmore. Here. Ms. Sudkamp.
Here.
Ms. Cahill. Here. Mr. Meyer.
Present.
Ms. Skidmore. Here. Ms. Pitts.
Here.
Mr. Nicely. Ms. Reckers.
Here.
Mr. Hermes.
Okay, you've received a copy of the minutes from the July 2nd, 2019 regular council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to be made at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt as presented. Mr. Meyer, Ms. Kyle, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, you've also received a copy of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any additions to be made at this time?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask that we remove the first reading of the ordinance for the annexation of the unincorporated property and ask that we have a committee meeting just to talk through what those financials look like later at the next committee meeting.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Burke. Do we roll call or? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, any other additions or changes to the agenda tonight? Okay. I'll entertain a motion that we adopt with the removal of the annexation first reading. Entertain a motion. Mrs. Reckers, second by Mr. Meyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, tonight we have St. Elizabeth as our business spotlight. Scott, if you'd like to come to the podium and hit the little green button, please.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. I'm Scott Sedmak. I'm Director of Community Relations with St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I will say, even though I don't currently live in Erlanger, I spent a good chunk of my childhood on Timberlake and went to Miles Elementary, and I get to work in Erlanger every day, so I'm very happy to be with you all this evening. A couple Erlanger-centric statistics for you before I get into my slides. We have about 400 Erlanger residents that work for St. Elizabeth in one form or another across northern Kentucky. And then, of course, at our Dulwich location, we have several hundred people, certainly well above 400, that work there, which we've had the healthcare side there for a long time, but of course recently we had our St. Elizabeth Physicians corporate office move there from Thomas More Parkway. Let me go through some slides pretty quickly because I know you have a full agenda ahead of you, but tonight a lot of these are going to be about community-specific initiatives that we're working on or problems that we're facing, and I'm just going to go through that a little bit. So from a goals and aspirations perspective, we shoot pretty high. We want to make Northern Kentucky one of the healthiest communities in America. We certainly have a great deal of work to do, and we have reasons to be positive about it, and we still have challenges ahead. But you can see 4 of our main goals: highest quality care in the region, leading patient experience. That's really kind of internal, and then you move out a layer to making it the best place for our physicians, staff, and volunteers to work, and then finally being the best community partner that we can be. And when it comes to being that community partner, you know, we have to understand the challenges that are ahead of us when it comes to being a healthier community. And as you can see, as a state, unfortunately, especially in the last couple of years, Kentucky continues to fall in terms of health outcomes. This is primarily due to our smoking rate and other things tied to smoking and cancer, and of course lung cancer is kind of at the focal point of that, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. Kenton, out of the 120 counties, is 30th, and Campbell's 15th, and Boone is 2nd. And likewise, when you kind of look at the reasons for that, most of it is what I'll call social determinants or behavior when it comes to especially smoking, but certainly just being active and physically fit. And so we're looking for ways to, one, attack problems when they come from, patient presents, for example, heart events. And we've had a serious problem with heart-related deaths in the region. And we've done some work on that specifically since 2014 and been able to improve that rate when it comes to people presenting, largely because we're working with community partners and our EMS services to try and just make that rapid response time quicker and make it easier. And some of the other focus areas, cancer and certainly substance use disorder and mental health. And this kind of goes through some of the bullet point action items we're doing when it comes to smoking, really trying to subsidize nicotine replacement therapy, educate people on a community level, maybe try and find ways to reach people that don't necessarily come to St. Elizabeth, that don't interact with the healthcare system very much at all, to try and educate them and help them, and not just in ways that we want to help them, but we actually have focus groups. We want to sit down with them and understand what are your barriers, what can we do to make it convenient for you to make healthier choices, and how can we help that? And that kind of comes across the board too when it comes to cancer and substance use disorder and diabetes. From a financial standpoint, here's just some numbers that kind of go into the 117 million is a pretty big number. Most of that is when people come in our doors and can't pay, or they can pay part of the bill but not all of it, or perhaps they're under a government program where we'll get partially reimbursed for it, but not fully to the rate of our cost of care. And so when we say there's 117 million as a benefit to the community, some of that is in grants that are towards community projects, but much of it is just the cost of care that we're giving that we're not necessarily paid for or reimbursed for. That's part of our mission. When it does come to giving those grants in the community and our sponsorships and partnerships, we try and focus on these three areas: health and wellness, education, and workforce, which are three things that I think almost, would touch almost every institution in Northern Kentucky and kind of our focal point challenges as a region, not just as St. Elizabeth. And just a few things that we're doing there when it comes to partnering with education. We're excited. I just went to the first white coat ceremony, which is it's almost feels like a graduation, but it's when somebody starts medical school. And so this fall, UK's medical school on NKU's campus will actually have the first class of doctors to start to go through that. And that's pretty exciting too. And we're hoping those people will fall in love with Northern Kentucky and stay here and serve as our physicians for years to come. And just breaking out a couple of the different one-off things that we do. Certainly, childhood hunger is a nationwide problem, but especially in our region, we do a lot of good work with Go Pantry on getting boxes of food to families that need it, especially in the summertime when school's not in session. We do a lot of work with Habitat for Humanity, including a project not far from here. And as I mentioned, with that Northern Kentucky Quit for Good Challenge, we have over 1,200 participants, most of them in Covington, that we've been able to help start the process to stop smoking. Just a couple things on the opioid epidemic. It's a little hard to see with the colors on there, but these are bar graphs that show the overdose rates as they come into our emergency departments. It went up very high over most of the decade, and then in the last year and a half, it's gotten better. Some of that is due to patients that struggle with this moving to other substances. Some of that is due to the work that we've done, and the health department has done a lot of good work on getting Narcan out to the community. So it's kind of a mixed picture, but there are fewer incidents. And then I apologize, this is hard to see, but this is just a chart on the Kenton County syringe access program that the health department runs, but for Kenton County, it's in our parking lot in our Covington facility. And we've had almost 800 people come to the health department on Thursday afternoons at our Covington location, taking advantage of that. And 35% of those people are connected and referred to treatment programs. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. A lot of people not normally interacting with the healthcare system, the safety net system, wraparound services. That is a good outlet for them to get educated and hopefully turn their life around and stop using those substances. And this is kind of a snapshot. It's a lot of numbers, but it shows kind of every way that from a clinical standpoint, St. Elizabeth touches the community in Northern Kentucky. More than 1.5 million outpatient hospital visits, and certainly over 54,000 acute admissions, so our larger hospital facilities, among others. And just we're proud of our safety scores. We've done a lot of work on that. We're proud that I think last week U.S. News and World Report rated our Edgewood facility the #2 hospital in Kentucky. Proud of the work that we've done there, and just a few bullet points about our heart and vascular. And if you notice, it's some of these things, they're not just clinical things. When it comes to something like heart problems, it's not just the patients that come to our heart and vascular center. It's how can we be more preventative to the community? What can we do to avoid even having somebody come in, years in advance to try and spare them those problems that they might even need our services in the long term. And for those of you that have been over by Edgewood lately and seen the cranes, our cancer center is coming along and still on track to open later in 2020. It's going to be, something that's really dynamic and changing for this community. And it's when you go over there, if you're always just used to going to Edgewood for years and you see this giant building, it's just really something to imagine. And then our cancer care, as I said, unfortunately, Kentucky, largest lung cancer rate in the country, largest death incidence from lung cancer in the country. And part of the biggest reason that we're really doing everything we can, and again, just with, as I said, with heart and vascular, it's not just cancer patients, it's what can we do to involve the community, and what can we do to help people get educated on ways that they can lower their risk. And then actually one of those, we have this new low-dose CT scan program for those that have smoked in the past, that might have a higher rate of lung cancer risk. And by doing this, it's been done at some of the higher end cancer centers that you may have heard of around the country. And we were trying to prove that it's feasible for a community hospital like us to ramp that up and do more of that. And so far it's been very successful. And the idea here is to find somebody that might have a stage 0 or stage 1 lung cancer before they're in 3 or 4, and hopefully save their life. And just as I wrap up here, I wanted to bring in some of our women's services, because I know we have a lot of patients that go to Edgewood for women's health needs, and we have a new building. It used to be the old Northern Kentucky Health Department building where South Loop and Medical Village Drive meet. It's a 2-story building, so now that is ours, and it's for women's health. It's been completely renovated, and it just opened about 2 months ago, and it's a beautiful facility. But I know patients have gotten postcards saying where it is, but it can get confusing over there with all the construction and everything, so I just wanted to point that out. And then certainly here in Erlanger, Sun Behavioral Health has been open now for over a year. On that chart, it says 197 beds, and that's what the license is. I did want to tell you all 130 was the number that I got this morning as far as the current number of operational beds right now. And so even though St. Elizabeth is not Sun, we work with them and we're in a partnership with them. So that's all I have. Sorry if I was long-winded or I went through that kind of quickly, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I certainly appreciate working with the city. Being a regional institution, we work with a lot of cities, and I feel like the city of Erlanger is one of the strongest ones when it comes to having an open line of communication and working with you all. So I appreciate that, and thank you.
Scott, I wanted to say thank you for being here, and thank you for your investment, St. Elizabeth's investment, especially in the addiction services. It's huge for not only Erlanger, but all of Northern Kentucky, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Okay.
May I ask him a question?
Oh, sure.
Of the 130 beds that you have available, or that are available, how many of those are in use?
It would depend on a daily census count, so I don't know off the top of my head, but I could find that out for you. I mean, I would say that the maximum license is 197, and based on the clinical staff that we have there, that 130 is the number that is really the highest point it could get right now. And going back historically, the reasons for that are just trying to find clinicians that are a very hyper-specific specialized care for different disorders. And so it takes a lot of effort to try and recruit those people into the area. And so as we slowly fill that, it's gotten to 130. But as far as the number out of the 130, I mean, that's certainly something that I could ask, but it changes daily, probably hourly. So I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Rhonda Wolf. She's going to be presenting the American Heart Association Mission Lifeline Award. If you'd like to come to the podium.
Here with me is Amy Graham from the American Heart Association to actually present the Mission Lifeline Award, and I have some awards for some of our crew members to hand out.
Hi, everyone, and I'm very glad actually that St. Elizabeth is here because they help our EMS agencies in this area, and they are very involved. So with the American Heart Association, we strive to bring our evidence-based medicine and guidelines to EMS agencies and hospitals. These guidelines are what help physicians to make decisions on how they're going to take care of a patient, and also our EMS agencies in their processes and how they take care of patients before they get to the hospital. With the Mission Lifeline EMS Award, it's based on how patients are taken care of by EMS agencies, and more specifically, it's our heart attack population, or otherwise known as our STEMI population. These are patients that have a blocked artery in their heart and they are having a medical emergency that potentially could turn into a cardiac arrest. Your fire and EMS agencies, especially with Erlanger Fire Department, they're specifically trained to use a cardiac monitor to first know the signs and symptoms of what a heart attack is, and then once they put them on the monitor, to be able to identify what a heart attack is on a 12-lead EKG machine. They are also responsible for calling into the hospital and calling ahead of time, and that's where St. Elizabeth comes into play. For those of you that don't know, St. Elizabeth actually purchased for the Northern Kentucky EMS agencies an app called Pulsera. What Pulsera does is it allows the EMS agency to call ahead to get everything ready for that patient to have a quicker treatment in the emergency department and going to the cath lab to open up that blocked artery that is causing that heart attack. So again, Erlanger Fire Department, they went through extensive education, quality measures. They had to measure outcome data. And in each area that I just mentioned previously, as far as identification, doing the 12-lead EKG, calling the hospital ahead of time, and getting that patient to the cath lab in less than 90 minutes, they exceeded all the benchmarks for that for the whole year of 2018. So all of their patients in 2018, at the end of the year, they exceeded those benchmarks, and so they were awarded with the Mission Lifeline Silver Plus EMS Award for 2019. And we would like to really acknowledge that there are only 23 agencies in the state of Kentucky that have won a Mission Lifeline Award. And And in the country, if you think about just in the state of Kentucky, we probably have at least 1,500 EMS agencies. In the country, there's only been about a little over 600 EMS agency awards that have been given out. So this is definitely a thing to be proud of. And like I said, we are very lucky in this community as far as having fire departments and EMS agencies in partnership with the hospitals as far as what they do and how they take care of heart attack patients. So we would really like to recognize Erlanger Fire Department as far as what they have done and accomplished and how they take care of their patients. And then Rhonda's also going to highlight some specific crew members and what they've done throughout the year.
Amy gives that speech all the time, so my speech is a little more prepared on paper. So Erlanger Fire EMS is dedicated to providing excellent care to those that we serve by applying evidence-based best practices and working with our community partners to provide the best possible outcomes for all of our patients. Each firefighter, EMT, and firefighter paramedic that we have plays an essential part in the quality of care that's provided to each patient. Unfortunately, time doesn't allow for us to recognize each one, so I'm going to give you, we're going to recognize a few very exceptional individuals who either had a cardiac arrest save or they provided excellent quality care for a STEMI patient. So on May 2nd of 2018, Eric McDonald and Matthew Garrett, he's moved on, they had a 52-year-old male with a history of a previous heart attack. He was experiencing chest pain after doing yard work. The pain was radiating down his left arm. He had early 12-lead acquisition, so he got a 12-lead within a 10-minute time frame. It's really important to get that 12-lead EKG acquired and sent to the hospital in a timely manner so we can activate the system so that everything works and is coordinated together. So they had early notification and transport to the appropriate hospital where emergency department staff were waiting the arrival to go straight to the cath lab for the intervention. That patient had a 95% blockage of the right coronary artery. A stent was placed and the patient recovered and is doing well. So Eric McDonald is not here tonight. So I have a 2019 Mission Lifeline coin to give him. I need to say that all of these events that occurred are from 2018. That is the data that was collected and presented to Mission, presented to Mission Lifeline for these awards. We've had several cardiac arrest saves already this year that I might mention at the end, but most of these are for 2018. On July 24th, 2018, Greg Holian, Brad Harden, and myself responded to BP gas station for a 52-year-old male who had, a 63-year-old male. He was complaining of extreme weakness and chest discomfort. He was very sweaty. He had been painting houses at the time of onset. And I take that back. He was not complaining of chest pain at the time. He was just super weak and diaphoretic. So the guys, they did an early EKG, identified that he was having a heart attack, and treated him appropriately, took him to the appropriate facility. And that patient had a complete blockage of the left anterior descending artery. And that is a very serious heart attack that can be very fatal. Stents were placed to open the artery, and he had a very good outcome as well. On December 29th, actually, firefighter, paramedic, Poland, would you like to come get your award? Job well done. Appreciate it. Thank you. On December 29th, 2018, Josiah Woodruff, firefighter, paramedic Josiah Woodruff, firefighter, paramedic Eric McDonald again. They had a 71-year-old female. We were dispatched for a stroke. So as they're en route, they're thinking they're going to be met with a patient that's having a stroke. So already they're kind of behind the 8 ball, thinking, okay, this is what they're going to be presented with. They get there, and the patient actually was complaining of some chest pain, had been having it for a while. They provided a thorough patient assessment and did a 12-lead EKG, which determined that she was having a heart attack. They immediately loaded her, provided care to her, and got her to the appropriate facility. And this patient had a 100% blockage of her right coronary artery. She did well after the stent placement, and she was released and went home. So all these people could have been fatalities, really, and they provided the best possible care. And they, something that we try to ingrain in them is oftentimes heart attacks present atypically, meaning they may not have the classic chest pain. They may just be weak or short of breath or just not feel right. So we encourage our personnel to do an EKG on every patient that's greater than 35 years old, because, some of these people, we had a 52-year-old, a 63-year-old, we had a 54-year-old cardiac arrest that went, I'm sure you are aware, I think we kind of sent that out to everybody, that went down in the soccer field that we were able to resuscitate. Thank you to the police officers who provided CPR. I wasn't recognizing that one, but that's just, you just never know what you're going to get. So we encourage them to use all their tools to do a thorough assessment and to rule out any cardiac problems or figure out if that's what the problem is. The Mission Lifeline Award focuses primarily on heart attack and stroke patients. But I would also like to mention Josiah and have him come up here. I'm not good at this presenting awards thing, I'm sorry. It's my first time. So Josiah, I'll have to talk about him a little bit more than the heart. He's had several critical cardiac patients. I'm going to give you this award. And he's had several cardiac arrests that he has had saves on. So, I mean, he's an excellent paramedic, and we're very proud to have him on our team. He does a great job, and I don't think you were involved in this next cardiac arrest that I'm going to mention, but you had one recently. Which one was it? It was
Price Street.
Yes, he had one on Price Street. It was an 80-year-old female. She was in cardiac arrest, and they resuscitated her. Our Lucas device that we have, the mechanical CPR device, they placed that on her, and she was actually waking up with that device doing chest compressions. She got a pacemaker, and she's home, which is amazing, especially considering her age. So, congratulations. Good job. So the Mission Lifeline, it's mostly focusing on the heart attacks and stuff, but we had a choking patient in 2018 at a restaurant. It was October 12th. She's a 50-year-old female. She went into cardiac arrest after choking on food. Bystanders did CPR, and our crews arrived and took over care. The airway obstruction was removed, the airway was secured, CPR was continued by our fire EMS personnel. She was defibrillated several times. En route to the hospital, she received ACLS care, and she regained a pulse in the back of the ambulance. So by the time they got to the hospital, she had regained her pulse. I have talked to her, and I actually nominated this crew for an award that we didn't get, unfortunately. But she was going to come to the EMS banquet that St. Elizabeth was going to have, and we unfortunately didn't get the award, and they canceled the banquet, but it didn't work out. So she's doing well, and that was Blue Shift. Jeremiah Johnson and Justin Brinkman were part of that crew. We Mark Guttridge, Jay Kelly, and Jordan Ottaway. So, additionally, we had the two cardiac arrest saves in 2019. The one was the 34-year-old, 30-something-year-old in the soccer field, which is just amazing that she was able to go home to her family. She has 2 children. And the one Josiah was on Price Street, she got a pacemaker. So I can't stress enough the importance for citizens of the community, this community, every person in here, to learn how to recognize an emergency. Learn how to recognize it, call 911, take a CPR course so you can intervene and save lives. The community is the first link in the chain of survival in a cardiac arrest situation. So we need you out there, recognize the emergency, calling 911, starting CPR, early defibrillation if there's a AED available, and then we get there and take over the rest. So you're the first 3 links in the chain of 5. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I appreciate it. And thank you, Amy, for being here with us today. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Okay, all right. So we'll move on to the mayor's report. So I got quite a few items that I want to share with you guys. So the first, I got a phone call yesterday that I've been asked to serve as the governor's appointment on the Kentucky Emergency Medical Services Board as the mayor representative for the state of Kentucky. So I should know by Friday, when the Office of Boards and Commissions will move forward with my appointment. So it's pretty exciting to have Erlanger. I mean, obviously, our EMS is the top of their industry. So to be able to have that connection on a state level is huge, to be able to bring that information back to our city. So very excited about that opportunity. Next, I wanted to let everybody know, I guess I could do this in the summer send-off task force update, but very excited to announce that we've have the official logo, and for the September 19th, 2020 event. We're excited to start hinting at the exciting things to come. And the graphic designer that worked on this is an Erlanger resident, and he owns KYDA Consulting. His name's Dustin Miller. He lives over on Circlewood. Amazingly talented, and he was very excited. I met him at the Erlanger Business Council and presented this idea to him, and he just ran with it. And I think everybody that has been a part of this, the design process, has been extremely impressed by his talent and skills. And we have the image. The colors are a little funky on this screen, but I have the actual right here. So, and there's what's really impressive with Dustin's work is he creates the different elements so that he can use them in all different kinds of media. So some sample, coming fall 2020, a Friendship City celebration, the community gathering for the entire family. So he even created letterhead to put all of our documentation on. So I can send these around if you guys want to take a look at them. Very impressed with his work. I think it'll help us generate that excitement. Next thing I want to talk about is I'm currently working on the creation of the second and third sessions of the Youth Leadership Academy. So the fall 2019 session is going to be expected to start September 18th, and it'll be completed on December 11th, with the community projects tentatively set for December 14th and 15th. The spring 2020 session is expected to start January 15th and be completed on March 18th, with the community projects tentatively for March 21st, 22nd, 28th, or 29th. In order to get the word out to the newest group of sixth graders, I will be setting up a table at the St. Henry Ready Fest on Sunday, the Turkey Foot's sixth grade boot camp on Wednesday the 14th, and hopefully the Tishner's open house on Monday. So want to reach out to these schools where the kids and the parents are going to be there together. So it'll be a great opportunity. Instead of having something here and having them come to me, I'm going to go to them. So Becky Strauss and Chief Whitaker are going to be assisting me with this class for the fall and hopefully the spring. And we'd welcome any other assistance by anybody that's interested. So if this is something that is jumping out to you as something that you would be interested in participating, please let me know. We need all the help that we can get. Next, I have been speaking with a representative. Her name is Erin Peabody, and she works for the U.S. Department of Commerce and the U.S. Census Bureau. We have been asked by the federal government to create a 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. The purpose of this committee is to increase awareness and motivate our residents to respond to the 2020 census. So the gathering of this accurate information is extremely important to our city in so many ways. Some of those ways that the census affects our city is the distribution of more than $675 billion annual federal funds, the redistricting of state legislative districts, forecasting future transportation needs, which we all know is extremely important, determining all areas eligible for housing assistance and rehabilitation loans, assisting federal, state, and local governments in planning and implementing programs, services, and emergency response, and then also the designing of facilities for people with disabilities, the elderly, and children. So the census is required. It's by the Constitution for every 10 years. And, you know, that's 10 years that we have that data. So we need to make sure that those numbers are accurate so that the federal government and the state government understand we're here and understand our populations and our needs within our city. So the more that we can generate excitement, and motivate our citizens to participate. You know, right now we've been identified as a city that's not necessarily participating as much as we could. So we need to get the word out. And we've been asked to create this committee. I've spoken with a couple of individuals so far. What we're looking for is community individuals. I've talked to Bill Howard. He's going to look into whether he's interested in participating. Joe Christofield is going to be on the committee and play the role of the public relations. And I'm going to reach out to a couple of you on this council, as well as the president of the Erlanger Business Council, Michael Stubblefield, Amy Cooley with the Erlanger-Ellesmere School District, Tina Newsome, who is the PTO president of Kaywood Elementary, Natalie Rupert at the library. So I'm trying to cover all bases. So if you guys have any suggestions of people that should be a part of this, or you guys want to be a part of it, please let me know, because this is going to be a huge group effort. The last thing that I will say, this is kind of exciting. So my husband's company is called CrowdStrike. They're actually going to be visiting Erlanger for the third week in August. CrowdStrike is an American cybersecurity technology company. It's based in Sunnyvale, California. Jim's team of engineers are located all over the world, and it was suggested by Jim that they meet here in Erlanger due to the centralized location and our proximity to the airport, and then 2 of the team members currently live in northern Kentucky. These are people that are coming from California, they're coming from Romania, from New York, they're coming from all over, and they're coming here, which is pretty special. So over the last couple of weeks, Jim and I have been setting up lunches and their dinners, and making sure that they're tasting what Northern Kentucky's all about. So we're having Skyline, of course, and then we're going to be taking them to a Reds game, showing them the best of what Northern Kentucky has to offer. We'll try to have some Geta. So if any other suggestions, I'd appreciate them. With that being said, and also the fact that Sherry and Jen will be out of town on the 3rd Tuesday, I respectfully ask that we move our committee meeting to either the 13th or the 27th. I'd greatly appreciate you accommodating my request. There would need to be a motion if you would be willing. Kind of up to you guys. When would they need? Okay. So if you guys want some time to think about it, we can talk about it in new business. You okay with that? All right. That is all I have for my mayor's report. And let's see here. All right, Mr. Kramer.
Okay. It's all right. All right, a couple things. We've got a couple new developments between Tank and actually District 6. Tank is going to be taking a hard look at their network structure. I've got a meeting there at the end of the month to kind of see how they plan on looking at that and implementing some new networks possibly. I'll be bringing up the Erlanger Commerce Center, of course, since that's a stop we want to make sure is on there. So next month I should have a pretty good idea of what they're planning, what what their phases are, and they're going to have a public session in the future too, so I'll be putting that out after that meeting. Additionally, District 6 has just sent out a survey for the interchange in Erlanger. I've been waiting, they've been talking about this for a couple months. They're going to be taking a real hard look at the interchange out here, especially with all the developments around the airport. And in Erlanger, there's definitely a need. There is a survey that I shared with everybody. We also shared it on Facebook and social media for citizens. Feel free to share that, get that out. I mean, Erlanger, if you look at the map, it is Erlanger. That's exactly what they're looking at, every interstate in Erlanger. So, you know, we're the ones that drive it every day. We really need to be putting our input. It's not a super in-depth survey, unfortunately. I think there probably could have been some more, but it's a good starting point. And there's a lot of text box there to add your own comments. So please take a look at it and see if you can provide some feedback for them. Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it currently under construction now?
The current construction is just a replacement of concrete.
Okay.
This new study is actually going to change. They're looking heavily at the west to south ramps and how it's actually a much higher level. It's actually changing the ramps. Yes, but
Yeah, I took
we
the-
are
You
under.
took the survey, it takes 30 seconds, y'all.
Yeah, it's very quick. I would like to get as much information out there to start this off, because there'll be a lot more surveys after this, I'm sure. So please take a look at that and do it if you can. We did advertise Holbert today, is that correct? So that is up for bid right now, and we'll have something by next month for the council, and I'll keep you guys up to date on that. Pending anybody's questions, that's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Gatlin?
Yeah, tonight's legislation, we have a couple of housekeeping issues. First is the codification ordinance, which we pass each year. It's the second reading of that, and that just is going to incorporate everything ordinance between after 2470 through 2477 into the Code of Ordinances. The second is the pay scale, which again is a yearly housekeeping measure. This is the increases in each band's pay based on cost of living adjustments. The third item that we have is the tax rate. The tax rates these tax rates are based on what was budgeted this year. Fourth item is a municipal order where we're surplusing several items, including 2 police cruisers and a treadmill. And then the final item is a municipal order which will reappoint individuals to the Northern Kentucky Regional Ethics Association. And what is a little curious about this is even though I'm not even sure any of these people are citizens of Erlanger, every city that's a part of the Northern Kentucky Regional Ethics Association has the right to veto the board that they've chosen. So that's the final. It's just interesting, right? It's just kind of interesting. Because I'm looking at this list, and I honestly don't think there's a single resident of Erlanger on this list. So we have to go ahead and bless that as well. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Works? Kevin Quinn?
Good evening. Kind of ironic they were talking about heart attacks, and the fire and EMS have saved my father twice here in Erlanger. So just want to, Rhonda was part of that. So was Ben McDonald this last time. So just like to say thanks again. Capital projects. Center Street has been completed with mill and overlay by JPS Construction. They finished sealing last week. So that all looks great. The curbs look great. So Turfway Road and Circle Port entrance is scheduled to start mid-September. That will be completed by TMS Construction. So look forward to that starting. We conducted a public workshop for our next project, which is Woodchase, Summerwood Court, and Hartwood Lane last July 25th. We had good turnout, got to answer a lot of residential questions and concerns, and that should be awarded tonight. And last is the annual street striping program. Is scheduled to start next week. ANA Safety we'll be doing that with all handwork, arrows, stop bars, and crosswalks. So I can't.
Do you know when the lights will be activated on Commonwealth?
I'm gonna check on that, but it should, I would hope the first day it'll be working. I know it's all wired up and everything's ready to go.
I'm all
Just-
wired up too.
Yeah, it was wired up just in time for the last day of school, so.
Yeah, exactly.
we,
Thank you.
Should be good.
And congratulations to Grandpa.
Thank you. That's all.
Kevin, I want to say, the public workshop, going out to the neighborhood, excellence.
Yeah, it
Thank
was
you.
very well received. I know the last council meeting, there was quite a few residents here that were somewhat upset, but I think we won a lot of them over with the public workshop. They left happy, it seemed like. They seemed like they were big supporters of the project, so moving forward. So hopefully that's
Fantastic.
something we'll continue. I know that we're going to do that with some park programs, with the public workshops in some of the parks.
Very good. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, any reports from task force representatives? I've already talked about the summer send-off.
No, I was
Okay.
just going to add one, just related to the Blight Task Force. I know we didn't have an update last month. Work still goes on. There's been about 1,092 properties surveyed, and only 10 of those have been identified as potential blight properties. So not quite the numbers. I mean, that's a good thing that we're finding less than we want. We'll continue with the assessment throughout the rest of the city and have another update with another section of that property next month.
Very good.
Currently, it's scheduled for the same day as the committee meeting. Will that be rescheduled as well or canceled?
Let's talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Any other task force updates? Sherry, do you have anything to add from our summer send-off one today?
The only thing I have to add is I think that we're finally really starting to make progress. It's all starting to come together. You'll see here coming out soon where we're going to start putting some teasers out, getting people interested in it. There'll be something going out with the property tax bills for sponsorships, and then just to let residents know what's going on.
That was my question. I mean, I think all of this planning is great, but do we have any sponsors yet? Do we have money? I
We-
mean,
we
it's
wanted
going to
the-
cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I understand. And what we wanted was the branding and the marketing, because now I have the pieces of information I can put in front of the companies to have those conversations. So I was
Yeah.
really waiting on the branding and the logo to have something, because we want to be able to go in there and
I
wow
think
'em.
this would just be so much fun. But, you know, every festival is closing down. Every festival is ending. You know, I'm just really concerned that we're going to wind up in the hole over this. And I pray not, because you all are working really hard. But I have a deep concern about the money issue.
I will make sure that that's not a problem. I promise you. Okay? All right. Any other task force representatives? All right. Any correspondence, Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes, I do have one. I just received it a little while ago.
Did you have to tell them I forgot to mail it?
So Patty has sent us a card, and she was just thanking the city and the people involved in the city, whether you're a volunteer, an employee, an elected official, just thanking everybody for their loving support during her recovery. She appreciated the flowers, the cards, the texts, the visits. Everything meant the world to her. And that's all, ma'am.
Okay. Our bids. Ed, if you'd like to, it's already on for you.
Good evening. On our agenda tonight are two projects. The first project is the asphalt street resurfacing, which we went over last month. Unfortunately, once we got into our pre-construction meeting, Bluegrass Paving is unable to meet our deadline by the end of this fiscal year. Therefore, we've discussed with them and the second place bidder, which is Michael's Construction, and we would like to be able to award the bid to Michael's Construction tonight to make sure this gets done by the end of this fiscal year. Slight increase of 16%, but like I said, we're not going to be able to get it done if we don't do this. So I'd like council approval to award the 2019-2020 asphalt paving contract to Michael's Construction.
Yeah, what is the cost of that bid?
The cost was, it came in at $572,071.50 from Bluegrass. Michael's contract would be for $662,490, which is still well under our budgeted amount for these streets, which includes Shearborn, Lakemont, Ashmont, Old Turkey Foot, and a section of Narrows Road.
And that was the bid that was approved in July 2nd?
Yes. Like I said, unfortunately, with all the work that's going on in northern Kentucky, we'll see with our next one, with the concrete pavement, we only had two bidders. There's so much work out there, there's just not the workforce to take care of it all.
I believe I heard Mrs. Sycamp's motion, okay, and Mrs. Kyle, a second. Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I guess just real quick, I mean, is there any value in going back out to bid for that, or
I think it'll even get worse.
it's usually going to be, it'll be more than a $90,000
I think it'll be more than a $90,000 difference, and I don't think we'll get it done this year. As a matter of fact, I know we won't get it done this year.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, do we want to do a roll call vote? Just do a roll call.
Mr. Nicely? Ms. Cahill? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sudkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore? Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, motion carried. Bid approved. Okay, the next one is concrete pavement removal.
I'm sorry. Our second project is the concrete street replacement that Kevin spoke of with our workshop we did a few weeks ago, and that is Hartwood Lane, Wood Chase Drive, and Summerwood Court. As I said, we had two bidders on this project, with JPS Construction coming in at $860,410, and Michael's Construction coming in at $990,970. We'd like to award this to JPS Construction. This is slightly over the budgeted amount, which we're still within our budget for the entire capital projects, due to the fact that we're going to do a complete sidewalk replacement around Wood Chase as well. We went out and started walking that, and it's well over 75% that is just heaved or twisted. So we're just going to go ahead and replace every bit of sidewalk around that area.
Great idea. All right, do I have a motion? Okay, Mrs. Kyle and Mrs. Sedkamp, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bid accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. All right. Does anybody have any unfinished business tonight? Okay, Mrs.
I think we
Kyle?
do. Can we look at, when we decide when the committee meeting is, to have a special meeting to get the number of council people taken care of, instead of kicking the can?
Sure, sure. Did you want to talk, when did you want to have the committee meeting?
I want to have a special meeting before the committee meeting, whatever that is, either
Okay.
the 13th or the 27th that we decide.
Sure.
I missed the conflict. I know you had some people in from out of town, but was there other conflicts besides yours, Mayor?
Sherry and Jen are also out of town at a conference, correct?
Okay.
Okay. Mrs. Kyle?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the proper time to do this for our committee meetings, but I wanted to put a shout out, thank you, to our Erlanger Police Department, the Explorers, all the volunteers, the Phila Cruiser. They gathered approximately $6,724 of merchandise for the children going back to school. Around 4,300 items were donated, and that was at 3 different locations, so that's awesome. So thank you to our police department for all their help.
And our community.
And our community for donations, yes, thank you.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Ms. Spitz?
Does anybody have a problem with the 13th being our committee meeting?
I've got a conflict, but
So I know Rebecca and I have conflicts on the 27th. Yeah.
Are we allowed to do it a different
it's
day?
a special meeting, so we can do it whenever we want.
Okay. Huh?
Can we?
How about the
I mean,
21st, which is a Wednesday, right after when we would have had it?
Could we meet without Jen or Sherry? Maybe we just need someone to take minutes? And if Patty's going to be here, we can have her preside. We can, yeah.
Do we have anything even scheduled? My thoughts are, has anybody scheduled anything? Tom just said something about it, but is there anything even scheduled? Because we can decide at this meeting, if there's nothing scheduled for that meeting, we can cancel it if we have to.
We have
And
the
nobody's brought
annexation, but-
anything up. Nobody's brought anything up to have. at
Just
that
the
meeting.
annexation, I think, that I asked to delay, but I don't know if
But
are we in a
that's-
hurry for that, to do that on the 20th?
I mean, a lot of that, when we can discuss it, but I can also put out a lot of that information on email and put out any questions, like I kind of did today, if there are questions about it, and then we can still vote on it in September. I mean, I don't know if there needs to be an open discussion, that's fine, but I know you had a lot of good questions that I can get numbers for you. So if we can do it, if you can work it through email, and everybody's questions, I'll just keep pushing out. So we're not having a quorum on email, but I can still
No, yeah, I
answer
mean,
questions with everybody that way.
If we get just that information shared out,
Yeah,
I mean, that would be sufficient for me.
okay. I think that's perfectly fine. And I've already got Public Works working on that, so we'll have that by the end of the week, I'm sure.
I'm fine with doing the committee meeting as regular, with Patty if we want. I kind of with Tom wanting to do the special meeting with the vote for the council too, before the September meeting. September meeting, I know that's going to be around Labor Day weekend. Who knows how many people are going to be able to make that one. So, and we've already had our first reading. I don't want to go 2 months between first and second reading, so I'm kind of with Tom on that. if
Well,
we
we
can.
beat this to death, guys. We just beat
Okay.
this to death.
So we're going to go ahead and continue with our committee meeting on the 20th. And then I've had a request for a special meeting prior to the 20th meeting to add the second reading and vote for the council size. Yep. He'll be here. All right, all in favor of that? Do we need to have a vote, or are we good? We need a motion We need a motion, Mrs. Kyle, and a second by Mr. Cahill. All in favor, say aye.
All right?
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, do we have any other unfinished business?
I don't know whether you're still doing the special, like Kenton County Alliance, we met today. If you're not interested, I'll just give Sherry the report and she can file it.
This would be your opportunity. This is when it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, all right. All right. Okay. Kenton County Alliance met today at the Erlanger Public Library. There were 20 present. We discussed the crisis hotlines and their effectiveness. The crisis text line is a national number, and it is, if you look at your phone, it's 741. So you can even do it in the dark. It's just bottom, middle, top, 741. It's unique in that fact that it's able to be dialed without looking at the numbers. Did anybody just look at their phone?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't catch it, I'm sorry.
741.
741.
It's bottom,
No, I'm
middle,
not.
top. You don't have to look at your phone. You can dial it in the dark.
Okay. She said at the top, I thought.
Okay. Turn it over. And they said lunchtime is a very active time to text the crisis line. In 2013, the crisis text line was utilized 105,986,234 times. Mondays were the most texted days. The system is working because lots of people use it, and it is extremely active at lunchtime. We discussed underage drinking in private residences. We discussed alcohol and cell phones. Alcohol is not as prevalent as it used to be, but cell phones are the way of the world. We ran out of time at this meeting and will probably continue this train of thought at the next meeting in September. School will have started by then, and we may have other issues to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Anybody else?
I got one other thing, Mayor. I was originally going to ask this to be on a committee meeting, but I guess I'll bring it up in discussion now, and we can decide whether we want to do it in August, September, or just kind of move forward with it. But one of the things that, I've thought about for a while was Erlanger waiving its primary election. It's something that we kind of hold out there that I don't know that's ever been, I don't know when the last time something might have been executed to cause a primary, but one of the advantages I'm seeing is it comes in line with a lot of the other cities in Kenton County. So there would postpone that filing date that would be required. Instead of being in January, it'd be much later in the year. I'm not sure, the history of why we still have the primary election, or at least why we have it in our books, but that's something that I wanted to discuss. I mean, we could either do that now, do it in August, do it in September. I don't know that there's a tight timeline to do that, but something I at least wanted to talk about.
Would we like to add it to the committee meeting for the 20th? I'll be here. I will. We can add it to the agenda. Because I think
I can
people
just
would
add it to
need
the-
time to even understand the process.
That's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be this soon. It's something I wanted to talk about, just to get a little bit of understanding. I know we're one of the few cities that still do that, so I don't know if
Covington and Erlanger are the only two in Kenton County that are primary eligible. So it would be, yeah.
Yeah, and I, if I think about it from a council standpoint, we'd have to have 25 people file to run, and it's only going to knock one of those 25 off, so I don't know that there's significant value in doing that.
You would have the mayor too, if the mayor had 3 people running instead
Yeah,
of 2.
any more than 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody recall the last time there was 3 running for mayor?
Does anybody remember when we had 25 running for council?
We had 24.
Didn't have to have a primary.
Triggering a primary wouldn't be any additional cost to taxpayers, though, because there is a ballot in every 2 years.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, it wouldn't be.
Just throwing that out there to the residents in the
I mean,
audience that don't know that.
I mean, the only work there is for Kenton County.
Yeah.
But it does push that date off and allows others to, that, you know.
To enter the field.
You get right through the holiday season and you hit that deadline, so. Okay.
Well, do we want to talk about it more at the committee meeting, or?
I'm okay talking about it now.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, committee meeting,
okay.
cool. Any other unfinished business? Okay, any new business? Ooh, congratulations.
On the topic of elections, since we're talking about it, can we, I know we had previously discussed at one point putting together an ordinance for yard signs, how far out from an event they can be, so that we're not the very first in all of Kenton County with yard signs out in July and all of that fun stuff. It does not have to be put on the agenda for the forthcoming weeks, but.
We've talked about that. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be really careful with that because that's viewpoint discrimination. I would contend, and I think a lot of people would agree, that the cities that have ordinances that restrict the timing of when somebody can have a First Amendment freedom of speech issue in front of their yard, probably those ordinances are not legal.
Okay.
But we can discuss it at a committee meeting. But I mean, when the new sign ordinance kind of went through all of Kenton County, and I mean, there's discussion of political signs in there, and frankly, all of that viewpoint discrimination issue was kind of stripped away. And you really get into trouble then if a government actor removes a private First Amendment sign from someone's property. The city could get into a lot of trouble with that. So we would create an ordinance that I would argue maybe would be unenforceable. That being said, as a courtesy to all residents and neighbors, people should be reasonable, right?
I know we've spoken of it, I just wanted to hear your rationale, and I appreciate it, Jack, thanks.
It's not my opinion. I mean,
think
So,
that-
Jack, what
that
you're
might have been the
saying is I can put
first-
my signs out now?
well, I mean, as long as the signs comply with all of the other, I mean, there's a whole section on temporary signs in the Kenton County zoning code.
I think this was the first issue I brought to you. All right, so any other new business? All right, let's move on to legislation.
All right, first we have an ordinance to the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, approving and adopting a supplement to the Code of Ordinances. This is the adoption of the 2019 S3 supplement pursuant to KRS 83A060, and it will bring the Erlanger Code of Ordinances current through Ordinance 2477. This is a second reading.
Okay, do I entertain a motion that we adopt this ordinance as presented? Mrs. Kyle, Mrs. Sedkamp, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, Mrs. Hoffman.
Ms. Cahill? Mr. Nicely? Mr. Burke? Ms. Kyle? Ms. Skidmore? Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sedkamp? Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried.
Next, we have an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, updating the pay scale and amending the titles of certain positions to conform with the Kentucky retirement system. The strike-through portions are to be deleted. The underlined portions are to be added as required by KRS 83A. As you can see, there's been some slight nuanced changes pursuant to what the Kentucky retirement system has asked for as far as titles go, and then the minimum and maximum have changed based on the cost of living adjustment. Again, this also is a second reading.
Right, do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Mrs. Kyle and Mrs. Sedkamp. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reckers?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore? Ms. Kyle? Mr. Burke? Mr. Nicely? Ms. Cahill?
All right, motion carried.
All right, next we have an ordinance to the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, providing for the annual assessment of all real estate and personal property within the City of Erlanger, which is subject to taxation thereby for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2019, and ending on June 30, 2020, and providing for the payment and collection of such taxes and the penalties and interest thereon, and describing the purpose for which the taxes so collected shall be appropriated and used. And based on, you can see in Section 2 that the ad valorem tax on real property shall be at the rate of $0.317 for each $100, and that the ad valorem tax on all personal property shall be at the rate of $0.554 for each $100. This is a second reading, and these were the amounts that were a part of the budget. This is a first reading, my bad. Thank you. First reading.
Mrs. Hoffman, please note in the minutes the first reading of this ordinance, please.
Next, we have a municipal order of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, making the written determinations required by KRS 82083 for the sale or other disposition of property owned by the city. You can see the attached spreadsheet, which indicates that there are two 2011 Dodge Charger police patrols that are being disposed because of age and condition, and they are being transferred to another government agency without compensation, and that we also are seeking to surplus a treadmill, which is sold by electronic auction, which is to be sold by electronic auction. It does require a motion, a second.
Do I entertain a motion that we adopt this municipal order? Mr. Burke and Mrs. Pitts. All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, lastly, we have a municipal order accepting the reappointment of Marcus Carey, Robert Green, Darrell Cummins, Robert Sanders, Tom Quirk, and Wesley Williams, and the appointment of Bryce Rhodes as members of the Northern Kentucky Regional Ethics Authority Enforcement Committee for a 2-year term commencing February 1, 2019, and expiring on January 31, 2021. Yes, those dates are right, the clerk has assured me. Yes. For whatever reason, the Northern Kentucky Regional Ethics Association, I guess, waited about 4 or 5 months before they got this to us. And the only thing that I see different from in the past is I think this has put on Bryce Rhodes also on that enforcement committee. This is a municipal order which would require a motion, second, and approval.
Okay, do I entertain a motion that we adopt this resolution as presented? Mrs. Reckers and Mrs. Kyle. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, are there any announcements this evening? We have the Star Party on Thursday in Flagship, 8 o'clock? I think 8 or 8:30, when the sun sets. All right. If that is the end of the announcements, we'll go ahead and do I entertain a motion that we adjourn? Mrs. Reckers and Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a great evening.